Industry groups have welcomed today's package, though warned that further help may be needed after the winter. Our business editor, Simon Jack, has more.
Red-hot energy prices have threatened to have a chilling effect on the UK economy. Today, businesses and other non-domestic users got details of a 6-month cut in wholesale energy costs this winter. Annette Dolan says she welcomes a cut in the wholesale part of her bill, but wants more clarity on other uncapped charges.
There's some welcome bits, but there's a lot really unclear. Until I get my final bill and my final quote, and I know what it's going to be, I can't relax. It's really worrying.
So how's this going to work? Well, the government will cap the wholesale price of gas and electricity from October the 1st to March the 31st next year. For example, prices for electricity are expected to be around £600 per unit this winter. A cap of £211 will be applied. The government will fund the difference with a similar discount for gas. Other costs like standing charges aren't capped, but the government hopes it could mean final bills are roughly half what they would have been this winter. The programme will be reviewed in January to assess which sectors need extended support beyond April.
We've got 5,000 staff.
The Prime Minister has already hinted that hospitality may qualify for that, which would be welcomed by pub owners like Fuller's.
I think this was looking very bad for the hospitality sector overall, and I've already seen pubs and restaurants start to close midweek and close down permanently. I think this will be a lifeline for so many businesses to enable them to battle through the autumn and the winter period. Now what we need to make sure is that the consumer still comes out.
The government's plan to avert a nasty recession had two parts. The first 2 weeks ago, hold down household bills so people's disposable income isn't totally wiped out. And part two today, make sure businesses don't have to close down and lay off staff from their own crippling energy bills. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. The combination of those two packages could present future taxpayers with a bill easily in excess of £100 billion. The government insists this is a simple, speedy and significant response that can be altered as required.
What we needed now, immediately, quickly, was something simple that would give people confidence through the winter. What we will have is a review in 3 months' time, which will allow us to see that we are giving support in the right places and that we can ensure that continued support, if that's necessary, is directed at where it needs to go.
The Labour Party said that businesses still didn't have enough clarity to plan for the future.
If you're a business and you need to be able to plan on any kind of reasonable time frame, you're not getting any of the certainty that you should get from an announcement of this significance. So I'm a bit worried about people still not knowing what the future will hold for them.
This is intervention on the scale of the COVID furlough scheme. And it's not guaranteed to prevent recession. But like then, the alternative may have been a severe economic slump. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Well, the government expects the scheme for businesses to cost tens of billions of pounds, although the exact figure is not yet known. That's on top of the £150 billion plan to help households with their bills for 2 years. So how is it all going to be paid for? Our economics editor, Faisal Islam, has been looking at the numbers.
Yes, Sophie. The cost of today's energy plan for businesses, it says the government in the tens of billions of pounds. 25 billion, says one top energy analyst. A bit more, 40 billion, according to the Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies. It's actually quite difficult to work out, as it depends on gas prices and the structure of people's bills. But that gives a sense of scale. It's almost half the pandemic furlough scheme. And let's add on some of the other announcements we've had and we're going to have. In the next year, the household energy support costs around £60 billion. And if, as expected, there are a series of tax cuts for businesses and individuals, it could mean £35 billion a year less coming into the exchequer. These costs won't be paid for up front. The money will be borrowed. But it's important to say that the government feel that tax cuts on this massive scale will help grow the economy and therefore lower these costs eventually. But we have had no numbers or forecasts, which is how we'd ordinarily work all this out. This is where borrowing was thought to be going at the last official forecast in March. Now take a look at this latest prediction from the IFS. Borrowing is higher in every single year and by incredible amounts. This year, much of it will be down to that energy emergency. But over the next 5 years, it stays high. It's about over £400 billion more in borrowing over this period than forecast in March. So what could all this mean for the level of debt? That is all the annual borrowing made by governments added up over time. And this was the forecast back in March. But with these new announcements, borrowing will now rise and continue to do so. Not primarily, actually, because of the energy package. It's also down to these ongoing tax cuts and a slower economy. And all this comes at a time when the interest rate on government borrowing has trebled. So the hope is that in the next year, this funds businesses and households to avoid a major recession, and beyond, that the government thinks it can grow the economy much faster. Either way, it's forecast to borrow hundreds of billions of pounds more in the coming years as a